Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Division video. It is the weekend, which of course means it is time for another vendor reset video. I do apologise, there was not one of these last weekend. I was away, I was unable to kind of get to my PC, so I unfortunately just had to give that one a miss. But we're back this week, talking about the vendors, so let's not waste any time and let's get started. Of course, if you do enjoy this, you do find it helpful, then a like would be super appreciated. Any questions, as always, drop them down below. But starting at the special equipment vendor, usual kind of recommendation, do check the high ends up here because their perks do rotate on a weekly basis. For Historian, you have Proficient and Accurate. For Cassidy, you have Capable and Dominant. For Pakan, you have Unforgiving and Destructive, as well as, of course, your main talent. This one's actually not too bad. You could roll out something like Unforgiving and turn it into a kind of decent PvE weapon. Plus, you, of course, have Liberator with Skilled, Prepared and Brutal. That's actually quite nice as well, given the fact that it is a base M4 model. Were you to make use of this, you could roll out Skilled, given its relatively high electronics requirement, and turn it into something probably quite useful in PvE. Given the fact that you have Brutal, you could roll in something PvE relevant there, and actually have something that is not too bad. Prepared is probably not something I would ideally go for, given the kind of engagement range I would pick, but if you have to roll out one of these two things, I would lean more towards Skilled unless you're running a skill power focused build. If you are, then you can definitely get use out of Skilled. It is, of course, a very nice talent. As for your normal weapons, you have an M45A1 with Expert and Competent, an MP7 with Sustained, Predatory and Hurried. Now, I know we don't get to see the MP7 that often, and I was looking at this originally thinking, can we make something out of this? But I'm going to say just do not buy this because in a minute, there will be something else much more valuable. So skipping over that, it's kind of interesting that it does have Hurried because you typically see that on PP19s. But for the time being, let's ignore that. So you also have a classic Foul with Dominant, Capable and Adept. A Black Market SASG-12S with Vicious, Commanding and Self-Preserved. A Surplus SVD with Capable, Skilled and Disciplined. And an MG5 with Capable, Self-Preserved and Determined. So nothing exceptionally worth calling out right there. So for the time being, just focusing on the high ends, you have for the mask, a Tenacious Mask. Chest piece is Vigorous. Your backpack is Relentless. Your knee pads are Prosperous. Your holster is Nimble. And don't forget, in one of the kind of previous State of the Games, they did say that the Nimble holsters are going to be getting a change in a pre-1.7 patch. They're most likely going to swap these out so they have a heal over time and not just a flat health kind of boost on movement. So that change is coming at some point, not entirely sure when, but at some point before 1.7 drops in the summer. And as for your gloves, you have Decisive. Moving on to the mods, Prototype Firearms mod with plus all resistance and a Prototype Performance mod with Seeker Mine Damage. Now, the reason I said do not buy the MP7 is because if we run over here, there is an MP7 blueprint. Now, of course, not having done this last week, I'm not entirely sure whether it showed up last week, but for the time being, in case you missed it, there is now an MP7 blueprint. So, these are a very nice weapon to use in PvP. A lot of people like to use them in Last Stand. And as mentioned, they can be quite rare. It can be quite hard to find one. And if you do find one, invariably they don't necessarily have the talents that you want. So ignore the one at the special equipment vendor and buy the blueprint because you then have unlimited potential. Of course, it will cost you materials, but you can keep making these until you hopefully get a good MP7. So that'll set you back just over 900 Phoenix credits. You can grab that one. There is also an ACR blueprint, but we've seen that one for quite a few weeks. So for the time being, MP7 blueprint, pick it up if you don't have it. And then, of course, you can work towards building one whenever you please. As for the advanced weaponry vendor, you have a Rhino with Expert and Skilled. You have a Black Market T821, Accurate, Dominant and Talented. A custom P416G3 with Focused, Swift and Prepared. A Marine Super 90 with Fierce, Predatory and Meticulous. An M700 Tactical with Harmful, Toxic and Elevated. And a Military L86 LSW with Prepared, Sustained and Ferocious. Just to be clear, whenever I run through these, if I do go through them rather quickly, it's because I don't necessarily deem them that important or that exciting. If there are any weapons that I do think are worth your time, I will of course spend more time speaking about them. So in those situations, that's just a chance for me to kind of make sure you guys know what the talents are. Then turning our attention to the safe houses, the first one we're talking about would be Madison Stand. Over here there are a pair of Operator gloves with Savage on them. They have a dominant stamina roll. They also have critical hit damage, marksman rifle damage and critical hit chance. So in that situation you would probably recalibrate the weapon choice to match whatever you are carrying, and then you can actually get something relatively decent out of that. It's always good to kind of have a pair of Savage gloves just in your bag. You know, you might not necessarily use them for every single build, but it doesn't hurt to have a pair lying around. Then as for your Dark Zone safe room vendors, in truth there is not really anything exciting at any of the vendors, so I'm just stopping at DZ06 to show you the gear set pieces in case you guys want to check anything to potentially replace what you have. So you have a Striker Mask with a Dominant Firearms roll, crit hit chance and increased kill XP, a Final Measure chest piece, health on kill or resistance, a Deadeye Go Bag with stability, disrupt resistance, Final Measure knee pads with skill power, and a bunch of resistances, Deadeye Quick Draw holster with health, and Banshee Shadow Gloves with pistol damage, crit hit damage, and shotgun damage. So they are your gear set pieces in DZ06. Then switching over to the Dark Zone checkpoints, West 34th Street has a Police MK17. Now remember, the Police MK17 falls under the same category as the SCAR-H and the SOCOM MK20 SSR, all of which are those high magazine, fast rate of fire marksman rifles, and they are typically the strongest PvE marksman rifles you can get, so definitely very good ones. Not necessarily the perfect role here, but you do have Prepared, Vicious, and Fierce. So in this situation, depending on how you want to use it, you could swap out Prepared or Vicious, both of which you can actually get some value out of. I'd probably lean more towards Vicious simply because it's a lot easier to unlock Prepared. Then you could roll in something like Brutal and turn it into a pretty decent weapon. But either way, anytime these do come up, remember, if you are PvE focused, these are actually of great value. Some of the highest damage marksman rifles you can get, so definitely very, very useful depending on the setup that you have. Then finally, stopping off at West 53rd Street, you have a Reckless chest piece. Not necessarily the perfect role, it does have a dominant role in electronics, so you'll probably want to fix that, but it also has health on kill and health, as well as increased kill XP. But for the time being, that is pretty much it. That is your week. Not necessarily the best week, but there are a couple of interesting things to pick up. Definitely do grab that MP7 blueprint, even if you don't necessarily want to make it now. Just have it, so that way when you do get the materials, you can start working towards one of those. Definitely a very useful weapon to have if you go into Last Stand. Aside from that, a couple of other things you could get at a stretch, but either way, that is pretty much it. So that's your week. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. If you have any questions, drop them down below. And thanks for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.